So this is going to be the first of a new series that I'm going to be doing, and it's going to be a sporadic series, so don't expect it every week or anything like that, but it's called Model Me Over, and it's just basically me recreating my version of looks that I see on some of my favourite models in, you know, editorial spreads and in adverts and stuff like that. So this first look is inspired by a beautiful look that I saw on one of my favourite supermodels, or models in general, Jessica Stam. A beautiful, beautiful Canadian girl who I look nothing like, but I fell in love with this makeup. It's gloriously gothic, but in a real classy, elegant way. There'll be a link below to my blog post to accompany this video, so you can see the original look there. It was for some watch campaign or a watch advert, and I really, really love the look. So this is my version of it. And of course it's not necessarily the most wearable look in the world, but going on with this series, it's going to be a mixture of wearable and more editorial, so it'll just be hopefully a little bit of something for everyone. If there's any models you want me to look at, or even any actresses who you've seen modelling in spreads or in various fashion magazines, like there was a recent spread I saw of Kristen Stewart, beautiful, again it was really elegantly gothic, but I fell in love with it and I really wanted to do that, which I might get around to doing again. But any suggestions you can leave them below or let me know and I'll keep an eye on them. So I hope you like this first of the looks. Like I said, not for everybody, but I love it. Enjoy the tutorial. For this look, I'm not particularly or overly concerned with applying primer or anything like that before my foundation. It's more about the actual application of the product, so, and of the eyeshadow later on in the look. So what I'm going to do is just apply my Studio Fix fluid directly onto moisturised skin. Jessica's own skin in it is quite a natural, like natural matte finish for most of the skin, and then she has highlights along the temple and the high points of her face as well. I will be adding them on a little bit later on, but I'm going to apply my Studio Fix fluid first in just my normal colour NC15. Onto my face. She always has impeccably flawless skin in all her ad campaigns. Doesn't look like she has a freckle in sight. I'm not going to apply my foundation too heavy. The Studio Fix fluid is more of a medium to full coverage foundation, so it covers quite well without having to put on too much. You probably will see a freckle or two showing through, but that's fine. I'm using one of my new stippling brushes. This is the one from Real Techniques by Samantha Chapman. I picked it up from Boots there last week after being really impressed by the Core collection, which I got a couple of weeks ago. So I will be doing a video on that again soon. And then I'll conceal those few little blemishes once I have my eyes done, in case there's any fallout. So it is quite a dark, dark eye look. I love it. It reminds me of like The Crow or that kind of aesthetic. Really, really like it. Now I'm going to apply some eyeshadow primer, and then I'm going to do my eyebrows before I start on the eyes. This is my BH Cosmetics eyeshadow primer, but I'm using a Sedona Lace EB13 brush, which I think is fantastic for any kind of concealer products or applying cream products to the eyes. It's from the Vortex collection. And so for the eyebrows, I'm going to use my Lingering Brow Pencil by MAC. This is just a really nice mid-tone brown colour. I'd say light to medium brown colour. But I don't like my eyebrows to be too dark if I can get away with them, and this kind of pencil is really good for shaping. So her eyebrows on the inner section are brushed up, so I'm just going to copy the hair there on the inner corner and with the pencil lightly brushed up, and then for the rest of it just draw it in and pull it over. I always end up doing a mean face when I'm doing my eyebrows as well. I think a lot of people have to do that, especially when you have deep set eyes. So it's quite a tapered eyebrow shape. So for the highlight, which is only really underneath the second half of our eyebrow, or this outer half of our eyebrow, I'm going to use this Bourjois Ombre à Paupières eyeshadow in number 8. I'm going to use a short stiff eyeshadow brush by BH Cosmetics and press that along there. Don't need to bring it down too far because the dark eyeshadow comes out quite far. And then for the actual eyeshadow on the eye, it's very dark but it's not black, and it's quite taupe. There's a bit of brown in there and a bit of grey, so I'm going to be hopping between two palettes. I have some greys in this palette, and it's MAC eyeshadows I'm going to use for this, and then I have more browns in this, so I can kind of mix and match between the two. It looks to be quite matte on the eye, so I'm going to start off with a brown, something like cork even though it doesn't look like that warm, we'll be building onto it to start off with. And using the same eyeshadow brush, apply that to the main lid. Next, get a blending brush, and this is what you're going to use then to build up loads of colour. So I'm going to use this guy here, which is called Copper Plate. It's quite a taupey colour, so it's quite taupe. It's not quite brown, not quite grey. I'm going to work that around the cork and use it to kind of outline the shape of the eyeshadow running up to the eyebrows. So I'm using one of the MAC brushes, the 286. This is on counter at the moment. It's with the Natural collection or Naturally collection. This particular one here was out with the Christmas collection. And it's pretty much going from the inner corner of the eye up to the eyebrow. And it'll run into the eyebrow. So just use the tip of that brush on its side to perfect that outline. So straight on, it looks pretty straight down as well. And then lightly bring it up about 1/3 of the way in up on your brow, or maybe 1/4 depending on the length of your brow. And this is winged out as well, so you can just map out that shape a little bit as well. Using a light colour is always a bit safer for mapping out shapes rather than going in with a dark colour straight off. And as you look straight on, you can see there where you might need to apply a little bit more. So you can just add on and shape that up as you go along. Just working more of that copper plate in around where I put the cork in the centre of the eyelid. So roughly that shape, and I'm just going to go ahead and do that to the other eye now before I go on to the next step. In the picture, her waterline is darkened, but it doesn't quite look black. So what I'm going to use is MAC's Uniform Technicolor, which is a lovely dark khaki green. And I'm just going to run that along the bottom waterline, and also I'm going to tight line as well. And don't worry about natural darkness under the eyes. I'm leaving my concealer till last because the eyeshadow does come down a little bit, so I don't want to put concealer on where it's not necessary. Next I'm going to go back in with that same blending brush, and using the tip I'm going to go into my copper plate and apply it underneath the lower lash line. You can go down a little bit further with this look than normal if you want, because it is quite a shadowed look underneath the eye. It's quite a goth look, a really elegant goth look, which I love. And now I'm going to start building up and intensifying that colour. So I'm going to go in with this colour, which is a medium to dark toned grey colour called Print, and just pick it up on the same blending brush and start applying that back and forth into the crease. I'm also going to drag it down onto the lid. So I want this centre area right here, the centre of my eyelid, to be a little bit lighter. So I'm not going to go right over that with the darker colours. And then again, pull this up into the eyebrow. And basically just shadow that shape you applied with the copper plate. So you shouldn't go wrong as long as you're pretty much just following that previous shape. And then using the tip of that stiff blending brush that I used earlier on, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the Print, just at the very, very top, and tap off any excess and press that in under the lower lash line, right up into the lashes. So because you're just using the tip of the brush, it shouldn't come down too far. Just run it up into the wing you created there. And this comes right into the inner corner as well. So if you need to apply a little bit more of your uniform or whatever dark colour you applied to the waterline, you can just use that to define that inner section a little bit. And also up here on the inner upper half as well. We're going up into the top waterline. And back in with your grey then. And then I always like to go in with my blending brush again and run that just along the bottom of your colour. Just helps diffuse it out a little bit. So now I'm going to add a bit of a brown, and then I'm going to go over it with the darker grey again. So this is just layering to get the colour I kind of want. I'm going to go in with this colour, which is Handwritten, I believe, by MAC. So it's a beautiful warm like red based brown, and pretty much apply it into all the same places again, just using the same blending brush. I don't care that it's dirty with other colours because it just adds to the look anyhow. So pretty much applying it in the same areas and right up into the eyebrow again. So just rub it up and down underneath the hair. So it just should look like your eyeshadow is merging into your eyebrows. Handwritten is one of those beautifully soft blendable colours. It's matte squared, I think, so I love it. I much prefer it. It's very similar in colour to Embark, which you could also use, but I just prefer Handwritten in texture to Embark. So these are again all matte colours. So I'm just going to get this as close, you know, without being too anal about it, to the look in the picture. It's more just inspired by it because I think it's a beautiful type of smoky eye. And then, of course, you'll see the original picture on my blog. Just changing to my third eye brush now, and this is a really tiny smudge brush by NYX, the number B17. Picking up the same brown again, and I'm just going to use that to bring it right up underneath the lash line. So using a smaller brush that's more tightly packed will make it a little bit more defined. So use your finger to blend out anything that you put on a little bit too much of. And then I'm also going to apply this onto the top lid, just to make sure that it's quite opaque. So you can see I still have a lighter part there in the centre of the lid. And now I'm going to go into my final eye colour, and this is Typographic by MAC. Again, a beautiful colour. It's a matte squared, so I actually prefer it to Carbon, which is MAC's matte black colour, because it just goes on much more intense kind of. And you can see there that really blends it up into the eyebrows. And I'm going to run a little bit of shadow through the eyebrows in a second. But for the meantime, just run that dark. So you can use a black if you want. Typographic is as close to black as I want it. And darken out that inner corner. And then lightly bring it out to that outer corner. So you can still see the brown along the edges of the eye. So that's why I like to layer sometimes a lot in looks. Because you will see the different layers underneath. However subtle there. I'm going to go in with my small little smudge brush again and bring that right up underneath the outer half of my lower lashes. And I'm going to put some of that Typographic just along my lash line. So put it on its side, so you're almost using it as an eyeliner brush, just to darken it right at the lash base a little bit. And apply some to the outer corner of the eyelids as well. And then also I'm going to use this bit of the Typographic mixed in with a little bit of the Handwritten and draw that up into the eyebrow, so it's literally the same colour going up into the eyebrow, and just mimic those hairs brushed up. And then just change the direction of the brush, and I'm using just Handwritten this time. I'm running it through the hairs, just through the body. I won't bother with the tail because it's dark enough. And then to finish off the eyebrows, I'm going to get a clear brow gel. I like the Collection 2001 because it's quite inexpensive and it's quite good. And I'm going to use that to brush up the hairs, totally brush them up on the inner part of my eyebrow, like so, and then smooth them down towards the outer half. So even though the eyebrows are quite intense now, I just didn't want to go too dark too soon. I prefer to build up the intensity so it would match the eyes a little bit better. And then I'm just going to finish the eyes by applying plenty of mascara. So I've been using this one by Sleek. It's the new Lash Out mascara all week, and I really like it. So it has a really tiny wand like that, but it's quite good for dramatic looks. And then she has loads of mascara on her eyes, so I'm just going to pop on a couple of coats of that, and then I'll be right back once that's on. Okay, so there are the eyes finished, and I know they look quite gothic. Jessica herself is blonde, so it's obviously going to be a bit softer on her, and my black hair, well, dark brown hair doesn't really help matters. But now I'm just going to finish off the skin. Clean up any fallout just with your foundation brush. You know, it should be damp enough to pick up anything that might have fallen down. And then for your under eye concealer, I'm just going to use something that I have at hand, which is this Pro Palette 3-wheel concealer, or just the Pro Palette concealer, and I'm going to use the pink colour and run it lightly along underneath your eye and on the inner corner as well. And if you want, then go back over with whatever's left on your blending brush from your eyeshadow and run that lightly along the edge again, just in case applying the concealer made it a little bit too neat. On the inner corner as well. And also conceal any blemishes. So for me, that's definitely my cheek area at the moment. So I'm just going to use a bit of my Vichy Derma blend and tap it in place. And then any redness, so around the nose as well. For highlighter, I'm going to use my trusty Pearl Cream Colour Base by MAC. This just looks very similar to how it would be in her picture. So just pat that using your finger, because it helps blend it into the skin really well, along the top of your cheekbone. And then she also has it going up onto her temple. So if you really don't like to use cream products on the skin, if maybe you're very acne prone, you could just go in with that Bourjois highlighter that I used earlier on. Or if you have a lot of texture, maybe use something that's not sheeny. Use something that's lighter than your skin tone but not shimmery, so that it won't show up any uneven texture. So I'm also highlighting along the top of my lip and Cupid's bow and the lines running up to my nose for my Cupid's bow, and also down the centre of my nose. And then make sure you powder your face just to mattify any of the other areas. So I'm going to use my Bourjois Healthy Balance Unifying Powder, which I love, and one of the Real Techniques brushes. So this is the blush brush, which is huge for a blush brush. I think it's more than big enough to use as your powder brush. And I'm just going to press that along any of the areas that might get a bit shiny, but I'm not going to put it over the highlighted areas. And then she has a bit of contour going on as well, so I'm going to use my MAC Tenderloin blush. It's just a very warm, light contour that she seems to have, so I'm going to use the same blush brush, just using the very, very, very tip, and run it along where my cheek, I can kind of feel, you can feel if you just press against your cheek where your cheekbone is, if it's not very obvious. Just run that along, going right up into your hairline. So that seems to be all the colour she has on her cheek. And then to finish off, I'm going to put a little bit of a very natural lip liner around my lip contour. Jessica has the most beautifully shaped lips, really defined, really, really crisp shape naturally. So I'm going to use MAC's Subculture. And she also has very defined arches just above her Cupid bow, so I'm just going to point mine a little bit to make them a little bit more like hers. And then in the look, her lips also have slightly slight taupe look to them as well. So I'm actually just going to pick up a little bit of MAC's Satin Taupe. And my lips have already been conditioned. I'm just going to press that along my lips, just to take away the pink look. So there you have the finished look. It's a wonderfully gothic but elegant gothic look. It is something that you would see in a lot of editorial looks. I think it's really, really beautiful, and it really will show off the colour of your eyes if you have light eyes. Jessica has very, very light blue eyes. I obviously have very, very green eyes, and I just find when they're encircled by so much like dark colours without it being fully black, especially if there's a little bit of warmth in there somewhere, it does tend to make them stand out that little bit more. So that's the look for you, and this obviously is going to be perfect for anyone with wide set eyes who wants to make their eyes appear a little bit more close set or not so wide set, if that's what you're after, because there is so much darkness going on in the centre of the eye. If you like this, guys, of course go to my blog, which will be linked below, to see the original look and any pictures from this look. And thanks so much for watching. I'll chat to you all soon. So long, guys.